Show and Tell Boston, where we talk about all things art, all things Boston. I'm your host, Tata. Can I get you guys to go around and tell me who you guys are, what you do, and then your political affiliation? Today's topic is about politics and essentially talking about immigration. So can I get you guys to go around and introduce yourselves?
Sean Nelson from Boston, independent, and an activist for the last 3 years.
My name is Cuban Mike. I'm from Lawrence, Massachusetts. I was Democratic. Now I'm leaning to independent. I do media, and I try to be an advocate to like the people, the Cubans in Boston, bring awareness to what's going on in Cuba.
What's your political
Independent. Independent now. Yeah.
Saida Ortiz. I'm from Malden, Massachusetts, and I became a Democrat in 2016 just to spite a white lady.
Hey everyone, Alex Place here from Milton, live in Guatemala most of the time. I've been an activist and involved in politics for a while, was on the Young Democrats of Massachusetts board, as well as the board of Our Revolution Massachusetts, and helped out on a bunch of different campaigns. And so I was Democrat. I'm more of an independent now, but thanks.
I'm Catherine Vitale. I'm born and raised in Boston, Dorchester. I ran for Boston City Council last year, and I've been an activist for the past 4 years. I was independent since I was 18, and I just switched to Republican a couple weeks ago. And I've voted for Trump since 2016.
My name is Lay. I'm originally from Jackmill, Haiti, but grew up in Massachusetts. I'm now residing in New Hampshire. I am independent. I'm also a local artist, and I work in the medical field.
Nice. So today's topic is essentially revolving around immigration. So can I get you guys to just go around and just tell me, how do you feel about the migrant crisis in Boston and in around the country? Whoever wants to start that up.
I'll start. I feel it's not fair to us Americans because you have people who are suffering here, but yet our government gives us crumbs, but yet people that they allow to come across the border illegally, they get everything that they need. They get food, housing, transportation, EBD cards, and you have people literally I've heard get less than $20 on their food stamp cards, and they pay into taxes. So it's like we're being treated like second-class citizens while you import your new citizens in here to kind of basically bribe them for votes.
Now, are they getting housing in Boston? Is that a Boston thing?
No, it's a Massachusetts thing. It's a whole country thing because what's going on in Massachusetts goes on across the entire country. We were just kind of affected a little bit more later because I watch being independent. I don't watch mainstream media. I watch the podcast. I watch the independent reporters who are at the border. I watch the stuff that you won't see on mainstream media with all the problems that New York, Chicago, California, Texas, and then down in the new other states, Arizona and Ohio. And it's like everyone's saying the same thing, but yet our government's doing nothing about it. And then when you do bring it up to light, they call you names. They say I think if you're black people and you say you criticize illegal immigration, you're colorism, or you're a xenophobe. Or then it's you see the reporter, they act like nothing's going on, but yet when they're on the ground with their cameras, you see the problems, the violence, the gangs, the poverty, the trouble that's basically is looking. Our country is starting to look like a third world country in a lot of these major cities, and they were all beautiful at one point, and now everyone's complaining. And when you see the government official on camera, nothing's going on here. But yet, someone who has their iPhone, their smartphone, you're seeing the real truth.
Would anyone like to respond to that?
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of family that lives in Texas, so and my sister used to live along the border before she passed. So I've seen the immigration ebb and flow my whole life. My parents are immigrants from Mexico. They came here legally. But the biggest problem is really that the immigration system is broken. We have not updated any immigration since 1992. My parents benefited from and I feel very close to the Haitian people because my parents lost everything in a hurricane. They lost their business. They lived in Mexico. They had a business, a home, everything. They lost everything. My grandparents lived here in the United States, and so they came as refugees, basically. But they didn't call it that back then because they didn't have that status. So in 3 months, my parents were able to become legal residents of the United States in the late 60s. And it was just that simple. Like, they found a job, and I refute, like, many of the Haitian immigrants that are here right now. I have a lot of friends that are working with a group of them in Woburn. They just want to work. Like, they're coming here to work. They don't want an EBT. They don't want housing. They just want a place where their kids are going to be safe, and they know that they can go to work, earn a living, and their kids can get an education. And I agree with you that we need to fix the immigration problem because there are gang members and there are things like that. But feeding into the trope of criminal immigrants and criminalizing our brothers and sisters, it's not the way to go. It's just not how I see it. Because if it weren't for this country and if it weren't for a hurricane, I might not even be here. And it was because my parents came here. They learned English. Not great, but they learned it. They became American citizens in the 80s, took me to vote with them the first time they were able to vote, and taught me how much this country can do if you're willing to work. And all I see with this group of people that are coming, the Haitians, the Venezuelans, they just want to work. And there is a lot of low-skill jobs that are available that Americans don't want to do, trust me. The biggest thing my parents did when I screwed off in school and wasn't paying attention, they took me out in the fields and had me picking tomatoes for a day. And let me tell you, I got my grades right back up because being out in the fields with these other immigrant folks that were migrant farmers taught me that I did have a path to get somewhere. And that's how I got here to Boston. So I think it's part of the way of we've been able to build our country is by welcoming more immigrants in. And we don't want to end up like Europe, like Greece and France that have aging populations that don't have any young people. Study just came out 2 days ago about Latinos in the United States. 32% of all Latinos are under the age of 18. That means that is a new group of folks that are going to be coming into our economy and working. We need to educate those kids. We need to get them up and running. And that is how we change our country, by getting more black and brown people all across our economic system.
I would. So I think that we lose the value in the conversation when we make it like an us versus them conversation, because I mean, I've been working with Sean for 3 years, so I think that I can pretty much depict a lot of what he's saying by what he said first. And when we have this conversation, we usually end up in a place where we're pitting the Americans against the migrants. And for the majority of the people, at least on the Republican side or the conservative side, people don't have a problem with migrants. Most people's families did migrate here. But the problem is that our country is they're not just allowing it, and they're not just not doing anything. They're actually bringing millions of people into this country, and it is illegally. They're here on temporary protective status because our country is giving it to them. They're building their voter base. They're creating chaos in the streets. This is a huge master plan. This is not by accident. This is intentional. I don't know a lot about Haiti, but I do know that recently there was like a huge prison that was emptied, and a lot of those people have been sent here from prison. So there are a lot of criminals. So when we have this conversation, we're not trying to label all migrants or all illegal immigrants as criminals, but there are a lot of criminals that get lost through the cracks. There's a lot of situations with human trafficking, child trafficking. We don't know if people are undocumented. We don't know that those children are with their actual parents. We have no way of knowing that. So there's just way too much chaos, and it's intentional, and it's because our government wants to create chaos. So, as long as we're fighting each other, we're not paying attention to what the government's doing.
I have to definitely agree with that. Like, I agree, we have to fix it. I don't feel like someone should have to wait in line 10, 20 years and pay all this kind of money to come into the country, but we need to do it right. You just don't say, hey, remember, Biden said this in his first month. He's letting them all in. And I don't feel that's perfectly right when you're not even taking care of your own country first. When I was growing up, you take care of your own home first, then before you start trying to help somebody else. That's how simply I want to look at it. Because like Catherine said, our government's doing this for their own particular reasons. Like I said, easy enough free voters. Because again, I've seen the independent reporters down at the border all across America speaking with the migrants or the illegals, however you want to phrase them. And they say, oh, I'm going to vote for Biden. I'm going to vote for Harris. Even before there was a group that was coming up here, Biden and Harris t-shirts. Where do you get those t-shirts from? So it's kind of like, you got to take care of home first before you take care of anybody else.
All right, so we got to focus on who is employing people, who is working the jobs. Are we watching? You were talking about watching earlier. Like, are we watching who's in the kitchens of our favorite restaurants? Are we watching who's picking the produce that we're picking out at the supermarket? All of those jobs are going to immigrant workers. They're all going to people that are crossing the border because it's been well studied and proven that American citizens are not doing those jobs. And the H-2A visa is for temporary workers that are doing unskilled labor. I would challenge that picking tomatoes or picking any produce in, a field for 10 hours a day is way more than skilled labor. It is unbelievably skilled labor to be able to do that. It's something that I've never done. It's something that I would say 95% of Americans are not even thinking about that type of job. So that's to say that let's have some empathy for the people that are here that work these jobs that really make America run. And that includes at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. He's a big employer of H-2A visas, which are, again, these temporary work visas for people. And in order to use these H-2A visas, you have to prove that American citizens won't do those jobs for the minimum wage. So again, I'm getting back to just like the rich and who's employing and who's making all this excess money, the monopoly of the supermarkets, the monopoly of farms, etc., are making a killing off of migrant workers. And we need to realize that workers need to come together and focus on the really rich rather than focus on people that are leaving their whole lives to come across the border, leaving their whole families, just as, again, 97% probably of Americans, probably more, are not Native Americans, So, like, we need to just realize that we're all against criminals, of course, but the biggest criminals are the white-collar criminals that are in Citigroup, that are financing climate crimes, or, in all of these different banks and financial entities and monopolies that we see. So, yeah, thanks.
I think we could all agree here that, we have a problem with the migrant crisis. And I think in conclusion, we just want this country to do better when it comes to that issue. And, I think we all agree. I mean, from the people that come here that are first generation or come from other countries, such as myself, this young lady here, and my Haitian sister right here, we all either are first generation or we come from there. So we all leave our native country to come here to have a better life. I think the issue is not you can't come here. I think whatever the law that applies to you to get over here, just do it. Because, it's not fair that you have somebody that's from another country and they're going by the book, they're going by the letter of the law, they're doing everything that this country needs to do, that you got to come here to be, a citizen or get a green card, and you have somebody here with no papers and they just cut in line. I'm talking about just literally cut in line, and they get all the benefits that people in this country try years for getting. I mean, the last time I was here, you had somebody that worked for the government, and even I could see, because I've seen this myself, you got people here that for years, they're waiting in line to get some kind of like house affordable situation, some government assistance, and they're waiting. We're talking about they wait like 3 to 4 years, and you got somebody from another country, they get it within 4 months. And I think that's a problem. As far as my man here talking about, like, yes, you got people that are migrants or even illegal aliens that have come here and they do all these jobs that Americans don't want to do, which is true. We don't want to like pick tomatoes. We don't want to work for hotels. We don't want to do this thing because we think we're either above that or it pays too low. So they think they have the situation, we should leave them alone and get their money, but there's a catch between that. One, technically speaking, they come here with no papers, so they get taken advantage from those jobs. And I know that for a fact because my mother did those kind of jobs, and she came here illegally, but because she didn't know the game on how to milk this country, they took supreme advantage of her. She used to work at a hotel, and when I tell her she got paid below minimum wage just to survive, and this is back in the 80s, the issue with that is they're still gonna be taking advantage. So it's a lose-lose situation. So we could let them get away to let them handle that because they're just not bothering anybody, and yes, they want to work, but at the same time, you got the other side that they're going to be taken advantage of. They're going to be paid below minimum wage. They're going to get paid under the table. There's no insurance, no medical insurance. There's no nothing. They don't get paid at all. That boss got the option to tell you, we don't want you in today for whatever reason, or you could just take it or leave it. So that'll also become a problem.
What's Trump's policies that what are the solutions that he's offering about immigration and immigrants?
Trump wants to stop illegal immigration. So, I mean, it's like I said before, this isn't about anybody not wanting people to migrate to America. Of course, we want people to come to America, but it's our own government. We brought in over 288,000 illegal immigrants to Massachusetts in the past 3 years. That's not because they're suffering in their countries. These people are coming here wearing Jordans and having iPhones. We've been to the shelters. We protested out in front of the Roxbury Rec Center the day that they started moving people in. We've gone to shelters throughout, in other places in the state. And these people aren't necessarily all poor, struggling in their countries. We don't know what kind of conditions they came from. Some people come here to work and send money back home. A lot of people do that. They start businesses here because the government pays them to do that, and they send money back home. So it's on one hand, our government is exploiting these people. Our government is purchasing these people because our government gives so much money to these other countries, and then these countries send us all these people. So we're literally buying them. And then they come here, and then maybe they struggle for a little bit. Maybe they don't. Maybe they go straight into working. Everybody's situation's different. Maybe they're trafficking drugs. Maybe they're trafficking children. Maybe they're trafficking women. Who knows? And I'm not saying that that's all of them. I'm sure there's plenty of people who actually did escape horrid situations. And, of course, we have empathy for anybody who is trying to escape a really bad situation and anybody who's trying to get their children to a safe place to grow up. But, I mean, when we listen to the mainstream media and we let that be, controlling our way of thinking, then we're doing ourselves a disservice because all we hear is Trump's bad, Trump's racist, Trump's this, Trump's that, Trump hates us, Trump hates this person, Trump is just full of hate, and that's just not true. It's all of these rich people in power. He has told the truth. He has exposed a lot of the things that they do. So it's why do we keep listening to them and not questioning why the people who stay in power, who are doing this to us, are telling us that this man is bad? If that makes sense. I don't know.
Okay. I was going to ask you for your opinion.
I'm not trying to argue with you or anything like that, but personally to say, or what I've witnessed is, I feel as though Trump does, he does preach hate. And he attacks minorities pretty much. And I've been affected by it, especially when he got elected, and I was going to school. A lot of racism broke out because they felt as though the way Trump was preaching, he was preaching hate. He was preaching, oh yeah, we can target you. So for you to say, oh yeah, it's not true, but it's just have you heard what he's, when he does his campaigns or when he does, his little tours or something like that, do you see or you hear what he preaches on? And to the fact that, you have people who have oh, Trump, make America great again. Do you know what when people say make America great again, do you really know what people are actually thinking about, oh, make it great again? is mainly saying cancel the minorities, take our rights away, take our voices away. And I feel as though that's what Trump had, that's what he's been preaching, especially from seeing what he's, like his conversations and his rallies. So that's my say on that.
Yeah, so when I hear about Make America Great, I think it's more like going back like the 80s, the 90s, when we had like factories here, when we were more independent. You didn't have to rely on, it's made in China. It was kind of like that financial stabilization that we had here before, all the businesses went overseas. Now, like you said, no one wants to work those jobs because we've been raised to go get in these nice, low, comfortable jobs. Because, again, one of the things I've noticed as a country, we're spoiled. We're first, it's like, if she was my mom, like you said, your parents came from poverty, so they had to go work their way up. But then usually you see that they spoil their kids, and the kids don't know how to go work. They made you go do the farm work to teach you a lesson. And I think here what we see is we're all spoiled. We want the nice, comfortable computer job. We go to college. I'm expecting to make $150K, get all these benefits. Instead of working your way up, you're stuck in the middle and go up to the top. Because when I was growing up, I'm 45, you saw it was like you worked the entry-level jobs and you worked your way up the ladder. Now it's just like I go to college, I think I'm better than you. I'm going to get this job. And that's the spoiledness of it. Because I definitely agree. A lot of us don't want to work those jobs because a lot of us have never been raised, especially in the cities. But I think that's the narrative that, a lot of people, like Catherine says, the government, the media says about that, because no one simply asked Trump or asked a Trump supporter, what does that mean to you? It's already assuming, we're going back to Jim Crow. We're going back to slavery. No one's talking about going back to those times, but no one wants to sit there and have the conversation because they're going to rile you up to assume that if I have a hat on, I want you to lose your right as a woman. I want you to lose your right as a black man or a Latina because I'm black and I'm gay. We had 4 years of Trump. I never lost any of my rights. Because if you ask that question, what rights did you actually lose? And you think about it, you had this man in office for 4 years. He's not new. He's been there. I think a lot of people, again, he just tells you out of straight because most of these politicians, they know how to talk to you. They know how to get in your head. They know how to play your emotions. And I think a lot of people are in their emotion because we have not been taught to be critical. We have not been taught to have a conversation. Because usually if someone sees that, like for example, we've been doing standouts. I've had my own people call me a traitor, call me the N-word, and not have a single conversation. I had one guy who was heckling me, and I said, you don't even vote. And he said, yeah, you're right, I don't. So why are you heckling me? So I think it's a lot of times that we have been trained to be in our emotions and not use our heads and not think. Because coming from an older generation, like I said, I'm not that smart, but I know when someone's lying to me. So when you tell me that Trump is racist, funny, 45 years, never seen this man being called a racist before. Shaking the hands of all these famous black people getting his money. But then he runs for president in 2016. He's a racist. He's a misogynist. And it's like, please prove it. Because when you ask them some question, can you please show me the evidence? I'll wait until you go online and find the article, the video. But when you ask them to go do that, they get mad and they walk off. And we don't have that conversation.
Well, I'm willing to have that conversation. Trump's dad was a known Nazi. He actually helped organize a Nazi rally in the 40s, late 30s, 40s. Somewhere in that ballpark, 39 to 42, somewhere in that ballpark before we got into the war. Was the largest Nazi gathering in all of the United States in Madison Square Garden in that time frame. In the 70s, he and his father, because he was working with his father at that point, were brought on federal charges for discriminating against black people and not renting to them, purposely having their rental agents, because they owned a lot of properties in, I believe, Queens and Brooklyn. Don't know it off the top of my head, but I could find the articles. And were brought on federal charges because they were discriminating and not renting to black families in regardless of their economic status, just no black folks. And the day he announced to be president, he called my people, my family, my Santa Patria, that we were bringing in murderers, rapists, and killers. And, you know, like every other black and brown person, sure, do I have people in the criminal justice system that have been, you know, incarcerated? Absolutely. But my whole family aren't murderers, rapists, and thieves. And so, yeah, when he comes down that golden escalator calling my people out like that, you ain't going to get my vote.
He didn't call your people out. He was talking about MS-13 specifically, the gang.
But he literally said Mexicans. I remember because I watched it.
He said MS-13.
No, he said Mexicans. I watched it live. I couldn't believe it because I was like, he's really running for president? Let me watch this. And that's, again, my husband was working from home that day, and we both just sat there shaking our heads like, wow, that's how he's going to come out of the gate.
He was talking about MS-13.
I think we're just talking about the wrong thing, and we got to be talking about the rich and the people that really run this country. The fact that Biden was still up there when he was clearly not right before that debate. We need to be talking about the tax cuts that Trump gave to the billionaire class, and just realize that Trump, and I think he's different than the norm, which is refreshing because the norm is bad. I think we all agree on that. The Clintons, bad. You know, Biden also part of the Clintons. But anyway, we got to talk about the $1 trillion that we give to fossil fuel companies every year so that they can get it in free subsidies and they make record profits. We need to look at all these corporations that made record profits during a pandemic, got tons of pandemic relief money, and the working class sees none of the benefits. We need to talk about the fact that the minimum wage has not been increased for over 20 years. It is the most important progressive policy to lift up people so that they can have food on the table, a roof over their head. They can have the education tools to be able to think about the important issues that we're talking about and even consider another side to the story, because there is another side to the story in all of this, of course. But mainly, there's tons of money. Like, we give away here in Boston, we give away hundreds of millions of dollars to General Electric, and we don't have money for affordable housing. You know, we have a plan for the Olympics in 6 months, and there's no plan for the transportation and getting it right. And so we got our priorities really wrong. And we need to be thinking about people that are in leadership positions to take on those challenges and be prideful about that. Like, let's get the tea to be world class. I'm shocked there aren't local companies that want to champion that, like Gillette. Like, why Gillette? If they made the tea run on time, I'm sure we'd all buy Gillette razors, you know, or these different things. So, but we got to focus on the rich. We got to focus on the uber rich and those that are taking over our electoral politics. We got to talk about Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, two of the most progressive people that were against the genocide that's happening right now. We got to talk about USA foreign influence and why that leads to immigration in the first part. We got to talk about multinational corporations. United Fruit Company, headquartered in Boston, killed the first democratically elected president in Guatemala to take like 30% of the land there. We got to talk about the foreign influence that our companies have so that we can have cheap stuff here. And we gotta be talking about the top, and we can't be talking about the people that are just trying to get by, because that's not the people that we should focus on. And the last thing I'll leave is the Gini coefficient, which measures the imbalance between rich and poor in a country. And of the G8 countries, which are developed countries, Japan, UK, Germany, we are number one in terms of inequality, and we are closer to India in our levels of inequality. India is not in the G8 countries. We are closer to India than we are to the second place, which is the UK and England. I want everyone to think about that. We are closer to India in terms of inequality than we are to the UK. There's something fundamentally wrong with the vast wealth inequality in the country. So we got to have a higher tax. Taxes were 70, 80, 90% during some of the best booming years. Stop fighting for a billionaire you don't know, that has never known any struggle that you have in your life. He has no clue about at all. So please, let's focus on equality for all.
Can I just say one more thing? Well, I think that we went in the direction we went with the conversation because we were asked a question about Trump. But also, if we're here today to talk about immigration and we want to talk about the money being spent, then why don't we talk about the $1 billion that Massachusetts has spent in the past 3 years on illegal immigration only? And we're projected to spend another $1.8 billion in the next year on illegal immigration only. So that's a huge deal. You know, we have homeless people. I mean, I myself am on Section 8. I've lived in a homeless shelter with my 2 kids, and the only reason I live in Boston right now is because I have Section 8, and I'm on welfare and food stamps, and I'm unemployed. And, you know, if anybody knows a struggle, I'm somebody who knows a struggle. So this isn't about fighting for a billionaire who knows nothing about my struggle. This is about speaking out for what's right and trying to show people that we are being lied to, we're being programmed, we're being manipulated by the mainstream media, by the people in power who happen to be Democrats right now, because I don't honestly believe in either party. I don't believe in the 2-party system. It's another illusion to us that, you know, we have to have some form of controlled opposition in every single situation. So the 2-party system is just one of those, you know, Democrat, Republican, black, white, gay, straight, American, immigrant. They want us to believe that the line of division is a vertical line and that we are each other's enemies when the line of division is actually horizontal, and it's the 99% against the 1%.
Can I ask if you guys think that there should be any sort of budget for people who are illegally immigrated at all, or should that money only just go to American citizens who are struggling? So what are you proposing, like, you know, if there was a budget or a budget at all?
Me? I mean, I think at this point in time, we shouldn't be worried about anybody who's not an American. We're in multiple crises right now on every single aspect of life. I mean, there is no situation in the world right now where anything is okay. I mean, everybody is upset. Everybody is broke. Everybody is struggling in some way or another. People can't afford gas. People can't afford groceries. People are struggling. Everybody's struggling. So we need to fix our country first. And I mean, America is the laughing stock of the rest of the world. And I mean, the laughing stock to the people who control the world. And, you know, the people who, America is the leader of the free world. So people are counting on us to get the rest of the world out of this, and we just flop every chance that we get. So I don't think that we should be spending any money on anybody who's not an American in this country until we fix our own country and our own situations, until we get our own people off the streets. And you can't pour from an empty cup. So why do we keep trying?
What about, like, you know, people saying that, you know, a lot of these people are taking the jobs that people don't want. You know, if we don't have, like, a budget for them to say, you know, at all, like, wouldn't that cripple kind of businesses, you know? Just asking.
I mean, I don't know.
I could say something about that. I was in a discussion a couple of weeks ago, and this is a girl I met from D.C. She worked, I think, at the post office, and her friend, they all worked together at the post office, and her friend was like a high-level manager, and she was making good money, and then she trained this guy who, he wasn't, he had a green card. He had a green card, he had a job there, and she was working for X amount of years. She was getting paid good money, and then she was teaching him, like, you know, how to be an employee, whether it be like a semi-manager, and then, like, 2 months later, that guy who she thought, who was teaching how to, like, you know, how to, like, do the job well, he took her spot, and she got demoted and got a pay decrease. So the whole plan was like, you're going to teach him how to do it. They didn't tell her till later on, you're going to teach him how to do this, but then later on, we're going to demote you, and then whatever you're getting paid per year, you're going to get a pay cut because we need to have a budget, and he's going to be that guy to take your spot. So to say, like, you know, we could take that part about, like, you know, immigrants taking the jobs that we don't want, but then you got the other side again. There was a situation in California a couple of years ago, I remember reading, with a lot of black folks, there were certain jobs that they wanted to get, like, you know, McDonald's, Popeye, you know, minimum wage job, and they weren't getting hired, and there was, you know, they were complaining that you had illegal immigrants and Mexicans taking their jobs just off the fact that they were getting paid less, and because they didn't know the language. So now you got the other dynamic you got to go with, because now, you know, I know I laughed about it too. But when Trump was saying, yo, they're going to take your jobs, this is what they're kind of sort of talking about. You know what I mean? You will get demoted at a certain level, and they will pay somebody to undercut them to, you know, to make sure they'll get a, you know, they meet their budget. So you got to look at other different dynamics in that situation. And another story, you talked about, what should we do about the immigrants thing? I have a friend of mine that owns property, and there were these folks from Venezuela that came through, illegal immigrants. They got a grant of $40,000 so they could live in their house, so they don't got to pay rent for X amount of month. Meanwhile, I have a friend of mine who's still waiting on a grant, and I had another friend that got a grant for, I think, for like less than $10,000. So now we got these kind of dynamics. Again, you got people that just cutting in line, and they're getting all this money, all these benefits. So it's like, again, we're not saying don't come, but, we are getting mad at the system because they're not taking care of us. So it's a strange dynamic because, I come from first generation, so I knew that my parents came to a certain situation. But back in the days, there was at least some sort of resource so they could be helped out. And, people were a little bit more nicer then, so they were willing to help people that was going through a certain struggle. People don't got that kind of love anymore because they're either racist or they don't trust them, for a certain amount of reason because you don't know the person. It's not the 80s and the 60s no more that people are willing to just help everybody out because people are scared, if you have, other motive, are you going to rob them? Are you going to steal from them? Or you just got other motives? And not to say that everybody's bad, but everybody got like that one eye open to see like what are your intentions.
I love that you brought up trust. And I look at my Netflix account, or I look at any of these streaming platforms, or I look at Hollywood, and I see way too many guns, and I see way too much hate, and I see way too much just conspiracy stuff. And I think that also gets to the heart of, like, the big question. The big question is the military, right? Like, do we need to say that we have the biggest military of them all? Do we need... You see, but that gets to trust, and that gets to even what we're talking about with just like lending a helping hand to one another, like the community aspect that is so lacking in today's society. So really, like, do we trust one another in terms of immigration and society, or are we falling prey to this distrust theme that is poisoning a lot of U.S. culture through capitalism, through I can do it on my own, I can bootstrap it?
It's a variation of a lot of things. I mean, I'm taking therapy, so I've been having trust issues. That's another conversation. So I've been having problems with trusting people between relationships with girlfriends and wives and parents. That's a whole personal thing. So I'm a firm believer. Reach one, teach one, help one another. But at the same time, you got to keep one eye open because I will give an example. Everybody here could be a great human being, but there's always that one sneaky person. So it's like, who do I trust? Do I give everybody with an open heart and roll that dice to see which one's going to stab me in the back? It's a tricky situation. That's up to you. That's an answer. That's an up to yourself answer. Like, if you're willing to, like, how open and how loving are you willing to be? You know what I mean? If you're going to help that fellow man. So it's tricky.
See, I hear what you're saying. I just know that in my community, in my culture, in Latino cultures, in gay cultures, we help each other, right? Like when my parents moved to the United States, my grandfather had a friend at church. They went to church. My dad that Monday had a job interview, and by Wednesday he had a job. Like that's how, it worked. And I still see that happening. Like, again, my friend is, she and I went to college together. Her parents immigrated from Haiti when Papa Doc and all that stuff. So she'd been here a minute. And she and her church are now helping these new Haitian immigrants kind of find jobs, do things like that. And so I do think that I hear what you're saying about, like, these incidents. I'm not saying that that's a lie or untrue. I'm just saying that the majority of people are getting help from their own communities, from their own people, from people who actually do care and want to help. And I mean, even during the pandemic, one of the most beautiful things, the pandemic was terrible for everybody, but one of the most beautiful things that I helped create was a mutual aid group in my town. And I made friends there that, I worked with people organizing that they will be my friends for the rest of my life. And we brought food to people who again, immigrant families for the most part that were, one person got sick and then all 10 of them were sick and they were all in lockdown. And the generosity that I saw from my neighbors and the wealthy people in my town, people were giving thousands and thousands of dollars of food, of aid, of help, just cash. And they didn't care who we were giving it to. They entrusted us to take that money and give it to other folks. And so I hear your cynicism. I hear what you're saying, but I do believe that there are still good people in this country that want to help. And this is the problem with our government, is that it was super easy for us to get together, a group of 10 of us, start organizing people and going, okay, well, this family's got 10 people. They're from Guatemala. They're not going to want this kind of food and this kind of food. Let's get them some, masa and stuff like that. And then our Asian brothers and sisters, they have their foods and things like that. And so we were able to, unlike the city who took, months and months and months to get themselves organized to how they could help people, we were doing it immediately. And I think that's what's wrong with government right now, is that we are paying attention to the wrong things. B, we're not being greedy. I'm not saying, greedy or selfish, but we have trust issues. We have trust issues, and we do need to have conversations with each other. And that's the real problem. That's what they want. They want us to stay in our little bubbles and fight each other. And because we're not that far off. Like, none of us trust parties. None of us trust any of those things. I am part of a party because I am trying to change it from the inside. Now, maybe that's the dumbest thing I've ever tried to do, but here I am. Because I believe that if you're not at the table, you're going to be on the menu.
Bar.
On that note, we're going to take a small break.
That was a bar there. That's a bar.
On that note, we're going to take a small break and we'll be right back. Show and Tell Boston, we're back with a part 2 for our politics and immigration panel. We have some new faces. Going to get you guys to introduce yourselves.
Hey, what it do? It's your boy Most Generous. Come meet the family.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Wedley.
What do you do and what's your political affiliation?
Not politically affiliated with any one particular party. I vote with my beliefs. Currently, I work for the city of Providence as a director.
Oh, and I'm I'd say leaning Democrat, but also leaning independent.
My name is Gene. I'm independent. I mostly vote based off what benefits my faith the most. And I'm in law enforcement.
Nice. Cuban Mike, you said you had a story for us.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to drag the story, but long story short, I'm getting tired with particularly Massachusetts, United States of America, but basically Massachusetts, with, having this fake inclusion, claiming that they love us, but in reality, they want us to not around, or they want us to keep us there from a distance. So, quick story. I mean, everybody knew what happened with the situation with the Venezuelans in Cape Cod, with DeSantis did what he did and shipped them there, and then the whole debacle happened. But a lot of people don't know that they pulled that again, but this time it was near the town close to where I live at, and they had over 100 Venezuelans hanging out there at a hotel, and they knew what to do with them, so they did it really sneaky, and they tried their hardest to make sure it didn't get to mainstream media or got to the local news, which it didn't. It just got to the local newspaper where I live at, and the mayor for that city was pissed. And when I told you he got rid of them in the quickness, he got rid of them in the quickness. So it's very upsetting that during the Trump years, when the whole thing happened with the immigrants, and you had all these flyers and posters saying we welcome everybody, we don't discriminate, we don't hate, and then you see them at their front door, and you not only got rid of them, you bring them to to these impoverished neighborhoods that we barely have any resources. So the little resource that we get, you take it from us, and then it's another. They put us in a really weird spot because now you got us going against them. So it's like a us versus them kind of thing, and it's spread another sense of division. Because, we do empathize with them, and we do know they're going through certain situations, but it's what do we do? What do we bring? So you need to tell me it's like the conversation we had in part 1. You actually have those resources to help them out, but you don't want to do that because you don't want to get your hands dirty. So it's just a nasty situation that you don't want to do it. And you can look at the governor, because I believe she lives in Arlington, and I lived around the Arlington area. It's very nice out there. Very well off, well-to-do. And it's like they don't want to do them there. They want to ship them, like, either to Lawrence or Lynn or sanctuary cities, or even out here in Roxbury and Dorchester. And it's like, it's full. It's too full. So I just don't like the hypocrisy behind that. Either you're going to help them out, or, not bring them, or figure it out.
I was gonna ask, would you guys agree that these like suburban cities are voting to have immigrants here and then shipping them into like impoverished neighborhoods?
Nah, because I'm in the suburbs and I'm with that working class community. And when I talk to these people, they don't want these people here. The reason they're shipping them off into these urban cities is because those are the people who are voting for these illegal immigrants to come in. So they're more like, okay, if you're going to vote for them to come in, you're going to bear the responsibility of these people as well. I mean, I don't know if you agree with me or not on this, but that's exactly what's going on. So it's like, you're not going to pour your glass on the table and expect me to clean it up for you. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And it also you talk about division within our people, but it's also division within our government. That's where it all starts off with. So you should be upset at the people that you're voting for. You know what I mean? And it's these Democrats who are bringing these people over here with no plan. These people think they have a plan, right? I speak to a lot of these Haitian immigrants. I have a lot of my family who came over here. They're promised these jobs, the housings and stuff like that. They're promised these plans, and they come here and they do absolutely nothing with them. And that comes from the people that are being voted by the people in these communities.
So would they to say, like, is issue more like on a local level, that you vote for these people on the local level, and then
it starts right from the top. When you're voting for a robot Biden that doesn't know what he's talking about, when you're voting for these governors, they're the ones making the decision on top. So that's where it starts. So, I mean, that's why when you vote, it's so like it's so. What's the word I'm looking for? It's very important. I think we should stop. I think what happens with a lot of people in this community is people vote for personal gain rather than the safety and the growth of the country. And then you guys pay for that at the end of the day. And I feel like that happens with a lot of the Democratic Party. It's like when I ask somebody, hey, who are you voting for, why you're voting for them, it's always for something that is personal. And when I talk to the other side, which is the right side, it's more about what benefits the country.
So it's more like the blue is something personal gain, and then like, the red is more like they look at the bigger picture.
At the bigger picture. You know what I mean? So
I'll let you finish, but also I didn't want the back and forth, so I gotta let you speak too.
Oh, okay.
No, I just wanted to chime in real quick just to give a little perspective from the city view, right? So whenever you think about any group, whenever you think about anything city-wise, you got to think about somebody has to operationalize that, right? The same way earlier you guys were talking about mobilizing together and coming together and being able to say, as a group, we came together, we're going to feed 100 families, right? The city, when a group of people come in, or a group of migrants, or whoever it is, or whatever the situation is, the city has to, one, allocate somebody to that, two, figure out what the protocol is, figure out if there's laws around that, and then how to react, and then how to move. So I always tell folks now, sort of being on this side now, if your government moves super quickly like this, you should be petrified. When things are moving a little bit slower, that's when I'm usually a little bit more at ease, for the simple fact that now I know things are being fact-checked, things are sort of being balanced. There's the check and balance is in place for a reason. Where I think I, would chime in a little bit differently is I think it starts really at the local level, right? Like, who's your state representative? Who's your local official? Who's on your city council, right? Because those are the people who are supposed to be there, who are supposed to represent you, who are supposed to trigger that and move that up to the mayor level, and then move that up to the governor level, and so on and so forth. So the aspect of, hey, this city doesn't want it, this city doesn't want it, you got to also think about, does that city have the capacity, right? Unfortunately, in a lot of the urban cities, there is abandoned buildings, there is places that can be rehabbed. So a little bit of that does factor into it. Like, hey, yeah, there is, old YMCA over there versus the suburb. Most of the places there are being used. There is very few abandoned homes in some of these suburbs, right? But it's finding that balance and also thinking about the people who are on the other side of government and how they're trying to mobilize, because what I've been a big advocate for since, working in government is talking to folks who are mobilizing already and saying, hey, what you're doing over there, they don't know about. And if you don't tell us about it, there's not much that they can do about it, because odds are the information starts in the community before it starts anywhere else, right? Because we know best about ourselves and we know best about each other, versus the people who half the time are sitting there and are representing us, they live on the other side of town.
Yeah, I live in Malden, and right now our high school, we have 68 different languages that are spoken. That is how diverse Malden is. I think we're in the top 5 in the city, not top 3 anymore. But that being said, we welcome our immigrants. Do we welcome everyone perfectly the way we should? No, it's a job. We took some of the ARPA money that we got from the government, from the federal government. We created a position called the language access, and now we have the top 7 languages are translated in every language. We have access to different groups of people that can do that stuff. That's one aspect I think that we need to do. The other aspect that I think we need to do in government, specifically with integrating our migrant communities, is offering more English as a second language. Because I can tell you right now, there aren't enough spaces. People are on waiting lists. And if we are going to integrate, again, because that's what's going to happen, they're not going anywhere. I wish the Trump administration luck trying to deport that many people, 12 million people. It's just impossible. What I think the biggest problem is, and again, I agree with you. Like I said earlier, I think the immigration system is broken. But do I think everybody's getting benefits? I don't. And do I think that everybody's immediately going to be able to vote for, whoever's helping them in here? No. One of my best friends is a political refugee from Sierra Leone. He just became an American citizen in 2020. He spent $15,000 over 20 years to become an American citizen, to have that right to vote. So you best believe he got sworn in the last day that you could sign up to be a voter. I had that voter registration for him right then and there. We took it down to City Hall, and he was able to vote that day. But that's not common. And it takes 20 years to be able to vote. So we're looking. If you're hoping that if that's the rule that the Democrats are trying to do to get more voters in, it's going to be 20 years from now that they're actually taking power. So.
The quick thing about that, it does take a while, but they are aiming for that, because I know for a fact when you had the first migration with Cubans, when they all came in the 60s, and the Democratic Party was actually the party that helped the Cubans out, what they did really well was get the Cuban vote. Yes. And the Cuban vote used to vote Democrat heavy between the 60s, 70s, and it stopped. Yeah. So, I mean, they will do that, and they will get their vote, so if they could have some kind of plan to get at least a good 20 years or 10 years of the vote, they will do that. So I won't be surprised that'll be part of the agenda, because they pulled that on us. And they even did it with the black community, that to this day, the black American community, they vote 90 to 94% just automatically for the last 60 plus years. So if they could use that game plan as a playbook, they will continue to do that.
And they are. I just saw somebody, I don't remember what state off the top of my head, but I just saw somebody on the internet the other day, and I don't remember what country he came from, but he's an immigrant, and he's here on some type of visa, and he said that he got a mail-in ballot delivered to him, addressed to him, and he was flipping out about it, because if an undocumented immigrant gets caught voting and they decide to press charges, that's grounds for deportation. So they're actually putting people in jeopardy by doing this, but they are absolutely doing it. And that's one of the main reasons why they're allowing them to get driver's licenses, so that they'll be registered to vote. And then I just wanted to ask a question to you in law enforcement. Are you familiar with the Boston Trust Act? So if I could just explain it really quickly. So the Boston Trust Act is like the sanctuary city law for Boston. And essentially, if somebody who's undocumented gets arrested for committing an actual crime, the Boston police are not allowed to cooperate or give any information to ICE, to immigration.
Well, that's not true though, because once you get fingerprinted, it goes into a federal thing, so they're automatically told. Like the Boston police officer isn't the one calling ICE, picking up the phone, but it goes into the system and they get notified that way. It slows the process down. It does not deter the process.
So the thing is that even if ICE does get notified because of the system, the Boston police cannot help them in any way. So I think it was in the year of 2023, there were tens of thousands, maybe not tens of thousands, I think like 12,000. I could be wrong on this number, but I think about 12,000 cases where ICE was trying to locate people or get help picking up people in Boston, and they went ignored because Boston's not allowed to cooperate with them.
Yeah, I mean, and this is my understanding, and I don't live in Boston, so I don't know the exact rules, but my understanding is that that means that, for example, you as an officer, if this person hasn't committed a legal infraction of our laws, but they would then call you up and say, hey, can you help us pick up this dude? He lives, we're going to go in and pick him up. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do. But if they're in the middle of a crime, like they robbed a bank, they would be coordinating with them. And my understanding is still, and again, this is my understanding of the Boston laws, is that they would still be adjudicated first, and then ICE picks them up after whatever sentence they've received. Because once you're in the criminal justice system, ICE is following you wherever you're going. So like if you're at Suffolk or you're at, one of the prisons, Framingham, whatever, they know. So when you're released, ICE is there. ICE is notified.
Not happening, at least in Boston.
Yeah.
Because they are just releasing them. So if they arrest somebody for committing a crime and they are undocumented, they just get released. In Boston, anyway.
Okay. We actually have there's a bunch of Haitians on the couch. I'm Haitian. How do you guys feel about the recent depictions of Haitians right now, and do you feel like they're being targeted? We all had heard the cats and dogs thing. How do you guys feel? Haitian? Yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, 3.5 from half.
Yeah, rep it. Just rep it.
One drop, my guy. One drop.
Well, the other half. Samoan.
Okay.
Anyone want to say anything on that?
Sure, I'll go first, I guess. I mean, it's to me, it's the nonsense we've heard all of my entire childhood coming up. Like I remember when I came here in the U.S. 2001, so I kind of got the lighter version, but I know the version my older sister got, and she was called names from off the boat to God knows what, right? So I'm not really surprised by it, but to see it being used for political gain is again, it's something. Haiti has always been a beacon of hope, and wherever there is hope, I think people try to kind of hide the light, and this is one of those moments I think they're trying to shun us from the world. So
I was going to say something very similar. Haiti's always under attack. I mean, being the first free black country, you're always going to be attacked. And like he said, Haiti's a beacon of hope. So we know if they grow, the whole black community grows. The whole Latino community grows. We know where freedom starts from, so they got to make sure to keep that tame in order to keep everybody else tame.
Yeah, and I'm not Haitian. I'm Nigerian, but but even growing up, I had a lot of friends who were Haitian, and a lot of stereotypes were thrown upon them. That they have AIDS, or they do witchcraft or voodoo and all that, and it's kind of the same thing that they say about Nigerians too, but certain types of tribes, so Yoruba, but I'm Edo, so Edo we're more just Christian or they practice Islam, But it's even growing up, just being called an African booty scratcher, that does a lot to you. You laugh at it now, but back then it was one of those like traumas that that I don't know. As a kid, it does something to you, just like bullying. And then when you grow up, you see the bullies. You see them dancing to Afro beats, or you see them dancing to different types of like traditional aspects of a culture and all. But I wanted to ask everybody individually too. So like, how has the immigration crisis affected each and every one of you? Yeah.
Yeah.
On a personal level.
Well, I had a quick. I'll answer that question, then I'll go back and try to bring it full circle. I mean, we had this conversation the last time, and I say, me personally, it has not affected me per se, but I've seen like a community being affected as a whole, if it makes sense. I mean, I'm good at my department. You're not gonna hear no story about saying like some immigrant trying to take my job or take my girl or take my. No, you're gonna hear that from me.
Crazy.
Yeah, they slick out here in these streets, son. They slick.
Yeah, man.
But no, you're not gonna hear that come from my department. But I've seen it as a whole being affected. Like we've been discussing the whole issue that for whatever reason they get the resources we can't get. Not me per se, but somebody else that has low income, stuff of that nature. But I'll keep it brief with me. I'm not affected with it, not yet, and hopefully I won't be. But I'm not affected with it.
I'm trying to learn how to say hello and thank you in multiple languages. But honestly, I've always grown up in a very diverse neighborhood. And honestly, the thing about the dogs, like my dad, they'd question what kind of weird food he was bringing to work because he was the first person, non-white person to work in his job. And they would be like, oh, he cooked up somebody's dog. And so when I heard that, I was like, damn, that's something somebody was saying to my dad 50 years ago. They still trying to pull that, the oldies but the goodies, as Kamala says. But it's not true. And like Haitian food is delicious. Straight up. Like I am excited. I am excited for all the Haitian immigrants moving into Malden because I can get some griot and some pate and I'm good. I'm here for it. And I mean, I don't know, like that's just how I've always been raised, is that I welcome it. Like I want to learn. We have a great Nepalese community in Malden and I love me some momos. Maybe I just like to eat. I don't know, but that's how it's influencing me. I'm expanding my my menu.
Two things real quick. Number one, you said something about you were being called African booty scratcher back in the day. Which, what the fuck does that mean to this day? I'm trying to figure what's the insult. What the?
I think it's Western aesthetics.
Oh,
because
okay. It's all right.
You know what I mean?
I never understood.
It's dehumanizing.
I know it's dehumanizing. But what's the thing
dehumanizing
behind that? And two things. I want to give a shout out to the Haitian community because you motherfuckers are probably the most resilient people ever since y'all found the liberation centuries ago. And y'all been through a lot of shit. We could go from the liberation thing. We could go through the war y'all guys went with DR. That's another conversation. I remember living I'm from Jersey originally, and I remember, having Haitian friends and they being picked on because they had the reputation that quote unquote they smell bad. And there was a quote they used to call them called HBO. Which I remember that as a kid.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, so I remember it's like no matter what the fuck y'all been through, y'all just come back like even more resilient. It's like y'all come back like y'all on steroids and say, yo, we ain't taking nothing. Now we got the situation with the cats and dogs. And like, y'all, if you want to know some resilient motherfuckers, just go to the Haitian community. Because y'all motherfuckers are just like we could take it all. Like I don't give a fuck what y'all gonna put me through. I'm gonna pull through and show you that we are those people. So I gotta give props to y'all. Much props. Y'all gave us the Fugees, so it's like.
And what about you, Lay?
I mean, when I'm an immigrant, so I came here when I was 4 years old. My dad would always tell me, "Hey, listen, you're a Black Haitian queen. So just letting you know, you're coming to a country where our country helped America a lot, but also too, you gotta watch out because you might be be a so-called threat. You know what I mean? My dad always would say like he feels as though America is kind of jealous of Haiti because we are the pearl, we are a treasure, but And I just feel as though the reason why Haiti is in so much poverty is because we're paying debt to France still, and also to America took a lot from us as well. You know what I mean? And we never got anything back from America, and America never said thank you to us. You know what I mean? And America benefited so much from the Haitian people. And the great thing about us is we're always willing to help out, regardless. And that's just how we are as a people. We're always willing to help out. No matter what like you do to us, we'll always turn the other cheek and help out. So.
And also had another question too. So like, what are some misconceptions you've received from either side, like from immigrants or from Americans, about like your ethnicity or your culture? Like, has an African American ever came up to you and be like, or look at your hair and mistake you for like a European or something like that? Or like, I just want to know.
So growing up, a lot of my friends, because I went to Belmont Public Schools, they'll ask me, hey, like, did you live in a hut? You know? or like, did you eat dirt or something like that? And I'm just like, no. Like, I ate regular food. I had a roof over my head. Like, what are you talking about? And it's true that the social media comes to play with this. They show more of like the poorer side of Haiti, but they never show the beautiful side of Haiti. And Haiti is very beautiful. It's a beautiful island. And also do you practice voodoo? And I'm like, wait, what? So that's another thing like I'm always asked. And so I'm just like where are you getting this from?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Who else?
Yeah, I got three of them, and it's funny. I got three. It's off top. It's 2024, and we view her as a person. They still don't believe they still can't believe that there's such thing as black Cubans living in Cuba. I just went to this thing a week ago by a black person, so I've still gotta like define my blackness. In 2024, with all the information you have on social media and all the things you gotta go through, I have to tell you, yes, there are black Cubans living in Cuba. We're still going to this weird misconception that the Latino community is not proud of their blackness. We got certain people that, they like to deny their blackness. They have self-hatred. And that's for another conversation. You know, they have that self-hate because it was taught to them. It's indoctrinated that black is not beautiful. But you have a lot of black folks, especially in Central America. I'm not even from there, but you come across a lot of Central America, they're really, really proud of their blackness. They don't even go with the whole biracial thing. If you're biracial, you're just not in the middle. They don't even consider you black like that. You just in the middle. Because if you're fucked in Central America. You're fucked. So don't even talk about the black struggle in Central America. It don't kill you. But you know, Latin America is very proud of their blackness. They're proud to represent that shit. And you know, there's no fronting with us when it comes to our culture and our blackness. And we're very attached to that. You know, when you come to like the Latin culture and their blackness, there is very attached to like Africa, meaning that like, you know, with America, even though they're proud of their blackness, is very Americanized. With Latin America, it's not only just Latin Americanized, but it's very close to like the motherland. And that's for another conversation, but we're proud of that shit. And because I'm Cuban, a lot of, you know, we get a bad flack because a lot of Cubans tend to vote conservative and Republican. Not all, but a good majority of that. And you know, you have to come to that culture and realize why they vote a certain way they do. But you know, once they come to that, they automatically think it's because they're racist or it's elitist. Not to say this shit don't exist, because there are some racism and there are elitists within our community, but it's a whole different animal that people don't understand. That, you know, we seen the game years ahead before everybody else. For example, I mean, there's a lot of shit going on in Venezuela, and Cuba, now that Venezuela see what the hell they're going through, they come across a lot of Cubans that were their friends and like, yo, you guys warned us that this shit was gonna happen, and you keep this guy running amok doing what the fuck happens. And even with my friend right here, that she talked about how communism is here right now, and you had a lot of Cubans say, "Yo, these are the signs of communism." When you have people that already, I'm not there yet because I don't believe that this country will be communist because it's going to take a lot of groundwork. That's why a lot of people want to take away their guns and whatever the case may be. But again, that's another conversation. But no, not all Cubans are nutty conservatives. Not all, Latin people are, ashamed of their blackness. They're proud to be black. And yes, there is such thing as black Cubans in Cuba.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also before I let you, but another misconception that I always get too about people outside of America, they always say like, oh, like African Americans, they don't have no culture, and it's like me, like my parents, they're Nigerian, so like I'm a product of, like immigrants, me and my siblings, but we grew up around African American culture. We grew up around hip hop, R&B. We grew up around everything that was essential, and just when I hear people outside of the country say like, oh, African Americans don't have no culture, it's like, how's that possible? Like, we created the blues, they created, what I'm saying, like hip hop, yeah, everything. So it's everything, and to this day, they take parts of it. Yeah, they like to take our blues, but they'll never walk in the same shoes as us. You know what I'm saying? So
I think that's just part of colonization, and I think again, speaking as another Latina, like my grandmother is indigenous. She's a Tarahumara Indian, and she was ashamed of her heritage. She was ashamed. She didn't speak Spanish until she was 16, and she met my grandfather. And so she would never talk about her indigenous language or indigenous culture or anything like that. I was her favorite grandchild. Why? Because I looked just like her, but I was about 5 shades lighter. And colorism is real. Like that's the other thing that I think we need, that we can all agree upon, that colorism is real. But I have been doing a lot of work to try and reclaim that indigenous heritage that I have, that most Latinos don't know who their indigenous ancestor is. And my cousins were kind of like a little like, no, we're American. And I'm like, and again, it's this whole weirdness that American ethnic people versus immigrants go through. Like my cousins would always be like, oh, those Mexicans over there. I'm like, you look like you could be on the side of a damn Mayan temple. What you talking about? That guy's a Mexican.
We're not like them though. We're not like them. We're different.
We don't have the pony shoe. Like literally, they were like, well, we don't have the pony cowboy shoes. And I'm like, I'm done with you. I'm done. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I've never been raised like that. And so I think it is important for us as people of color to do that work, and it's self-work. It's not telling you how to do how to be a Samoan, or how, you're more Haitian than Samoan. Even with doing like my cousin got all crazy into DNA, and he got us all to swab one Thanksgiving. And it was crazy because I'm straight up, these cousins that are Republicans, and they want their 401k to grow, and they're just living their best like Texas life. They were freaked out when they found out we were 8% Sub-Saharan African, and they're like, does that mean we're black? And I was like, did you not know that most Latinos are black, indigenous, and European? And I think that's...
I can say nigga now? Really?
No, you can't. No, you can't. I was like, and one of their daughters was like, we're black. And I'm like, don't say that outside. Please don't say that outside. You can say that in here, but don't go out in the world and tell people you black. Do not do it. Do not do it.
And I gotta give a shout out to your people too, because you guys had the first black president in the Western Hemisphere before we got it popping out here. We'll talk about,
and we got the first woman too now.
First woman, first black. And he was half indigenous also, wasn't he? Half black? Yeah. Vicente.
But that's the thing, right? Like, and I think that's one of the things that we don't realize, that race is complicated, and that we are all, for the most part, biracial. I mean, Black Americans too. Again, my cousin is really into these ancestry shows, and we're watching it, and every time I'm watching one of these shows and they show a black person, like, here's your white ancestor, here's the slave owner that you are related to, you are 38% European. And that's one thing that as Mexicans we learn, we are children of rape. We are both things. We are mestizo, which means mixed. And I think that if we had more of that, like in this country, I think we could, I'm not saying we're going to solve the race problem, but I think we could better understand each other.
Can I bring it back to us talking about the immigration. I don't know if we really got into like what are people thinking that the solutions are. Like, are you for people who are kind of going for Trump? Is it just mass indiscriminate deportation and just sealing the border? For you, you're saying like we like I don't know what your thoughts are.
I mean, honestly, we need immigration reform, full stop. Like, we need federal immigration reform. We can't do it on the city level. We can't do it on state level. This is a federal problem. And it's a federal problem that they had a solution for, that there was a lot of compromise that was going to be done. And again, it seems that because somebody in the Republican side said, no, we're taking it away from the table, they walked away from the table from it. And that's really the problem, is that we have this hodgepodge of immigration laws that are on the books that do not, I mean, that's why TPS exists, because they literally created this, the Bush administration, the first Bush created an amnesty, and that's the one thing that people wonder why immigrants vote for Republicans. I'll tell you why. It's because the Republicans are the ones that actually pass laws and get them into this country and create this law. Democrats have not been able to do it, and I say that as a Democrat. That being said, if we don't create some kind of system where, first of all, there's no line, so we need to either figure out how to create a line or do something about it. But we need, like, if we can show up and do FEMA and straighten things out down in South Carolina and start building roads and doing all this stuff quickly, we can create a system to process these people. And that way we get rid of the people who are, in gangs or doing things, nefarious. And we can keep people who just want to come here and give their kids a better life, just like all our parents did. And I do believe that it can be done. If we can send all that aid to Israel, if we can send all that aid to Ukraine, we can fix this problem. It's just, we need to.
So my issue with that is that the root of the problem is not that these people are coming here on their own. So the people aren't necessarily the problem. The migrants are not the problem. The problem is that it's the American government that's bringing them here. It's the American government that's literally purchasing these people and bringing them here. Because
can you explain that?
When you need to sell a product, you have to create a need for the product. They need to keep us in a housing crisis. I can speak for Boston specifically. We need to be in Boston in a housing crisis. So what are they going to do? They got to bring more people here. They got to keep bringing them in and bringing them in and bringing them in so that they can keep building and building and building and building.
Because these people are walking, you know that, right? They walk thousands of miles to get here, like from Central America. Like I personally know people that have walked from El Salvador to the United States.
Right, because we're welcoming them here. We're incentivizing them to come here. Just like this gentleman said earlier, these people are being sold something. They're being told like, you're going to get this, you'll get this kind of help, you'll get this job, whatever. I don't know what our government is telling these people to make them all come here like this, but we're telling them something. We're selling them some kind of dream, and then they get here, and then they're just kind of here. Who knows? I don't know what happens after that. But it's because we need to create a need for the product that we're trying to sell. We need to be in a housing crisis so that they can have reason to keep building and building and building, because that's where they get all their money. And the more people that we have, that they pile up into the cities, because it's not just Boston, it's all of the major cities all over the country, and it's happening in other countries too. They mix it up so much that we don't even know our own neighbors anymore. I mean, when I was growing up, kids could run around in the streets and all of the neighbors would be looking out for each other's kids, but it's not like that anymore. We don't know the person that lives upstairs or next door, because everybody comes from random places. Nobody stays in one place for too long before they have to move. And when we don't have communities of people who know each other, then we will never come together to fight against a tyrannical government. So all of this is done intentionally to create chaos in the streets so that the people will never be powerful enough to fix the government.
I mean, I'll say this, in terms of why people come here, I know for me, my parents came here because they thought they could give me a better life. And we had what I thought was a pretty decent life in Haiti, right? But the access to education, the access to growth, the access to be able to invest, the access to be able to, being in America is kind of like a beacon that opens you up to the rest of the world, right? If you can get here, that means you can kind of get anywhere else. So I think that's a big part of the reason why a lot of folks are coming here to begin with. The other side of that is, and the reason why I think you're kind of like, hey, you don't know who lives upstairs or who lives downstairs, I think it's because, for a lot of folks, they're scared, right? Like, I left Boston, I moved to Rhode Island about 5 years ago. The lady next door was from, El Salvador. About a couple of days, in, she was like, I haven't seen you turn on the light in the kitchen. And she came over and she brought some food. So it was kind of like, I don't speak Spanish. She don't speak English, but here she was with a bowl of food. Work all day. Here's some for me out there, right? And I think community is something that we all have to take accountability and say that we have to do our part, right? Like, if I see you here, you're struggling with the car this morning, it won't crank on, but I have spark plug. Just spark real quick, I can help you out that way. Oh, hey, I noticed your son didn't have a jacket on. Jacket for my kids when they were a couple years that age, and that's how it starts. And that's why I always kind of go back and tell folks, if we approach it with just the simple fact that me as a Haitian, I have me here now, my duty, hey, maybe housing is cool, you can do this and you can kind of work that system for a while, but if you want to buy a house, this is what it takes for you to do it. If you want to buy a car, yeah, they're going to tell you should get a lease and you should put it on a credit card, but guess what? That's going to take you a couple of years and it's going to do this and so on and so forth. So you kind of have to have the access and be able to spend the time we have to be a beacon for each other. And ultimately, I think that's what it turns into. And that's where the community starts, because the minute I start to say, hey, my Haitian brother, hey, how you doing? You're Cuban, let's go. Let me show you where I get patties from. Let me show you where I get grill from, right? Now we're breaking a meal, now we're having a conversation, and it turns into, you're no longer the stranger. You're the friend that I might not see you in 5 years, but hey, how you been? How's the kids? How's blah, blah, blah happening? Because then again, it goes back to that one act, that one moment that, to this day, I'm telling you, like, I'm literally about to move out of my current house, and me and her were having a heart-to-heart there earlier from me coming in. She's like, what am I going to do now? How am I going to know my city info? And I'm like, don't worry, I'm still going to come by. I still own the house. I'm still going to be here, because once you make the connection, you got to stick with the connection, right? Because I know he's in law enforcement. He might be able to tell me information about X, Y, Z. Hey, I need a little bit of information about this. You guys now know I work in city, right? Hey, listen, the tree in my backyard fell. I don't know who to ask, but I thought you might be a person. I might not know the answer right away, but guess what? I might have access to the person that does know it. And again, that's where community starts, and community continues to spark and keeps going that way. So,
and I'll say this about, you're not knowing your neighbors. I mean, honestly, it's because the housing crisis, right? It's because people can't afford it, because landlords are able to raise the rent like ridiculously. My son and his now wife, they were renting a nice, 3-bedroom apartment. They had a roommate. They were, making it work. And then boom, the landlord raised the rent $1,000. They couldn't figure it out. The roommate was like, this is too much for me. I'm out. And they tried to cover it for a little while. They figuring it out. They're just figuring it out. Boom. Next year, another $1,000. So in 2 years, $2,000 raise. They moved to Worcester because they couldn't afford to stay in the greater Boston area. And so I think that's definitely an issue. And again, it goes back to the whole, capitalism, blah, blah, blah. But it's literally people, the wealth inequality that is happening in our cities and in our state. I mean, Massachusetts is one of the highest in the country with wealth inequality right now. And so I think there are bigger problems that are causing all of these kind of cascading into all these smaller problems that you see.
Mm-hmm. How do you guys feel? Like, what are the solutions that we're talking about? Like, are you for mass deportation, or what are you guys thinking the solutions is to the migrant crisis?
like she said earlier, mass deportation isn't going to work. You can't get all these people out of here. We just need to find a way to help them while they're here. You know what I mean? And I don't think we're going to be affected by this now, but 10 years from now, we don't find a solution pretty soon. We're going to feel it. And at some point, I mean, Americans are already losing jobs, right? At some point, the jobs that we don't want to do are going to be taken over by AI anyway. So what are you going to do with these people that are unemployed? You know what I'm saying? So
I'll throw in a little fun thing to think about too. Having been in healthcare, one of the things that I'm like petrified and I'm watching happen right now is my mother is taking care of my grandmother, right? And we know the healthcare system isn't in its best shape. We know the healthcare system, they're losing nurses. The pandemic crippled that, right? My grandmother right now doesn't have enough access to be taken care of properly, just off of the fact that there is not enough bodies for that. So to think about my mother's generation, who's, 10 years, 20 years later or whatever the gap is, that generation right there that I have to take care of, I'm completely petrified because there isn't enough hospital beds for her, right? Yes. So if we get to a point where we're like, oh, we got to deport everybody, well, guess what? Some of these jobs we need people to do. We need people to be CNAs. We need people to clean our hospitals. We need people to maintain our roads. We need infrastructure to actually be here. So the concept of get rid is extreme to me, as opposed to sometimes when you have a problem and you break something, sometimes it's easier to figure out, oh, how can I repurpose this? How can we utilize the things that we do have here? Because let's face it, sending everybody home doesn't make us any better, doesn't put us in any better predicament than anything, I think. So
again, like, who is working in the back of our favorite restaurants? Who's picking all this fruit and vegetables? It's not American citizens. So I'm just going to go back to that again. Like, when we talk about the hardest labor working jobs, they're people that are coming here for a better life. And also, like, if we look at the H-1B visa, which are visas for temporary work people working in hotels, hospitality, in 2023, it was set for 65,000. They actually had to increase that by double to 130,000. And these are places like Mar-a-Lago, Trump's Hotel, that are employing H-1B visas, which are below the minimum wage. So Trump can say, oh, these people are taking American jobs, but he's also advocating for a lower minimum wage while paying immigrants to work at his places while he makes buku money. Like, we gotta see the incongruencies in everything that he's saying and the way that he's attacking the immigrant class while also making a killing.
Oh, sorry, you gonna respond?
Well, I was just gonna say, I feel like every time we talk about the jobs part of, the immigration crisis, is we're talking about minimum wage jobs and jobs that Americans wouldn't want to do, but we don't ever talk about small businesses, and we don't ever talk about American small businesses and the fact that they're being crushed. And if you look around Boston, I'm pretty sure most of the small businesses here are subsidized in one way or another by the government. So those people don't even really own their businesses. The government does, if you think about it, because as soon as they piss somebody off, they could lose it all, because that's how things work here. So why are we always talking about minimum wage paying jobs? Why are we always talking about hourly jobs and nobody's ever talking about small businesses? Because those people who are like shoving it down our throats that we need to constantly be raising the minimum wage and constantly be, defending people who will work the jobs that we don't want to work or whatever. Those are the people who own the corporations that are killing small businesses, right?
Yeah, but wouldn't you say it would be beneficial to raise the minimum wage, especially if it's been 20 years since it's been raised, and especially since we're in a time of inflation where everything is expensive. food, gas. It's like we just had to avert from a strike. Like, because the truckers, they were asking for was $5 more to minimum wage, $3 more. You know what I'm saying? And I read something in the news saying that they struck the deal, but they want to be able to start the meeting after the elections, which is strategic. You know what I'm saying? Because Biden, he's not looking good right now. But other than that, it's just like, people just have to see, like, where everybody's going through it right now. Everybody's broke. Also, wars, we're throwing billions of dollars to countries and also to starting wars in the Middle East. We just have to think about the long run, because it's not, I don't see no shining, I don't see no silver lining the trajectory that we're going in.
So the thing is, though, who takes the hit when you raise minimum wages? It's the business owners and then the consumers, because when the business owners have to pay out bigger wages, they have to raise prices on their products, and then the consumers have to pay more. So we're not winning. It's just an endless cycle going back and forth. The only people winning are still the guys at the top controlling everything. It's not any of us regular people that are winning.
I mean, I somewhat agree with what you're saying, but I think you have to also keep in mind is, and when you think about a dollar, right, it could go from his hand to my hand to her hand, and it can kind of go down the room, right? But at some point, if there's only three of us, the dollar only goes three places.
But
right?
Every time the dollar gets transferred, the government takes a piece of it.
Of course, yes. But the government takes a piece of it in order to sort of maintain and do all that it has to do, right? Because the government is what gives that dollar its value to a certain degree. Yeah. So we have to factor that piece in mind. Now, if we get to a point where we're like, oh, increase minimum wage and give everybody more money, yes, it just means now instead of $1, it's $2 that's going around, and so on and so forth. So the problem isn't going to just go away just because minimum wage is increased, right? If everything else is increased. If we approach it again where we're like, hey, we don't want folks here, well, the less people that are here, the less business that happens. The wonderful thing about business and enterprise is competition, right? The less competition you have, the easier it is for somebody to say, the price of this water is $1 and that's what it's going to be, and nobody can say anything about it. But somebody else comes by and they're like, hey, I've got a solution. I've got the same water, and now it's 98 cents.
And that's the free market.
That's capitalism.
But that competition ultimately is what's going to keep things sort of moving. It's what's going to keep things flowing, because we need people and we need the competition. And if the competition doesn't happen,
need capitalism.
The circuit doesn't move, right? Because what's going to happen? Somebody's going to be able to say this is $1 forever, and we're all just going to be okay with it. The question becomes, are we okay with that?
Speaking of which, didn't Biden? Who was it? Was it Biden or Bernie that was trying to fight for $15 an hour?
It was Bernie.
Oh, it was Bernie?
Definitely not Biden. But
okay.
It was Bernie.
Okay. Oh, it was Bernie. Oh, okay. Oh, no. I knew why I was going to fail.
Bernie was controlled opposition.
Yeah, well, he's a mess, but that's another conversation.
But it's the same thing with, you were just talking about landlords and people having to move because their rent gets raised, and it's the same thing there, is that we're always talking about high rents and rent control and affordable housing and greedy landlords, but when you're talking, I mean, there's a difference between a small landlord and, like, corporations that own massive amounts of buildings and everything like that. So when a regular landlord is raising the amount of rent, nobody talks about the property taxes. How much did their property taxes go up? Why do we never talk about lowering the property taxes?
I mean, the devil's in the details, right? Like, and honestly, I 100% agree with you. There are plenty of people that, like you, it sounds like you're going to do. You have a property, you're going to use it as a rental and do that. If that's the only rental you have, you wouldn't be the kind of person that I would go after. There would be an exemption to people like that. Or, I met an elderly lady who literally rents out the other 2 floors of her building. That's how she pays her taxes, because her house is already paid for. And she's trying to figure out whether she's going to sell her house and cash in right now, because I mean that's the other problem, right? Like we're making houses into our piggy banks, and that shouldn't be what they are. They should be a place that we live in. That's really the mindset that we need to figure out how to regulate. And that's literally all I'm at. And regulation is not a dirty word. Regulation protects regular people like you, like me, from being able to be exploited and pushed out, or our way of life to be easier and better.
I mean, I think that we're over-regulated in every aspect.
Well, look at State Street and BlackRock. State Street and BlackRock own 80% of the residential home market in the U.S. of A. Do we think we should regulate them a little bit more? Do we think we should regulate the four grocery chains that just came together to monopolize during the pandemic? Do we think we should regulate their price gouging a little bit more?
But I'm not talking about them.
Oh, you're not? Okay,
when we talk about rent control,
all right. I thought we were talking about
affordable housing, we're talking about affecting small landlords. It doesn't really affect those corporations. $1,000 to them is nothing. I'm saying when we do things like rent control, or when we start penalizing landlords for raising the rents, we're hurting these people who maybe own one multifamily or a couple multifamilies, and they're just trying to pay their mortgages or support their families.
But then when we look at someone like Trump that's trying to relax these regulations on all business entities and on the EPA and not believing in climate change, like it becomes a joke. Like when we see where this line of thinking goes, and like I agree with like your micro, like support the single family person, but then like you're talking about deregulation in a whole different way for industries that are already monopolies, that are already abusing the working class. So like we cannot get these two things confused. Like the small mom and pop shops, local businesses, absolutely, let's get them the money.
They're
but then
gonna be
non-existent
in a couple of years.
Well, then let's fight against Amazon, which a lot of us did, so that they wouldn't have headquarters here in Boston and take a bunch of our taxpayer money. Like, let's fight against corporate greed. Let's support candidates that did, so that they wouldn't have headquarters here in Boston and take a bunch of our taxpayer money. Like, let's fight against corporate greed. Let's support candidates that don't take super PAC money or corporate money, which are our revolution candidates under Bernie Sanders, which was the most important historical moment in modern history, was him out fundraising Hillary Clinton and the Clinton campaign machine and the Democratic Party. So we can say that Bernie Sanders might have been a joke to some, but to a lot of us, it was actually the most important moment in all of modern history to take on that sort of power, Clinton power, and out fundraise them with an average donation of $27. So where are we now? The labor union's stronger than it's ever been. Biden was on the picket line for the first time of any modern day president. So, you know, we're going towards a more worker-led movement and more equity, and that's better than a billionaire boy that wants to divide again. Like, it's bad. And like what he says is bad, like getting rid of the Constitution, getting rid of voting in elections, like
abortion
rights.
This
is that's crazy talk, and we shouldn't be talking about it lightly. What he said about Mike Pence and actually wanting like Mike Pence to die and like not minding whether his vice president was going to die based on the crowds calling for him to get hung. Like that, if that were on the other side, the Republicans would be having a massive field day. If Biden were saying that Kamala Harris should be offed because his supporters didn't like her, Republicans would go insane. It
wasn't because
over.
Supporters didn't like somebody. It was because he certified a stolen election. Which is treason.
So actually, we're running out of time, so I just kind of want to go around. If you guys want to give your final thoughts, you can make your last response to what we just said. But anything you guys just want to leave the audience with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first of all, thank you for the invite. show and tell, you guys could get spicy sometimes. And, I've seen the clips, and, every time I saw the clip, it's always a fun adventure with you guys out here. But I'm happy we can all have a constructive conversation with everything that's going on, respectfully. No bottles are being thrown, no shares, no yelling, no ratchetness. So, we have, hey, you guys know how to entertain. You know how to entertain. But, I'm glad we could have a constructive conversation. We could agree to disagree. I'm happy that we found more agreement as opposed to disagreement. Doesn't matter who you vote for. We all got one thing in common, that this system keeps dicking us around, and we gotta find a way to go against them and confront them. I mean, we are the people. We do have the power to shut shit down if we want to. If we have that, if they give us that illusion that they're supposed to work for us, let's make them make sure that they work for us. They have to earn our vote, and we have the power to who we vote in, vote out, and call out the fuckery, because we all want the same thing. We all want better lives. We all want a better future. We all want to take care of our family. So we all have one thing in common, and it's that the government is it's a motherfucker. So we gotta do our job as people, and it doesn't matter what side you pick or what side you vote. Learn to agree, to disagree. Don't let politics divide your families and friends, because at the end of the day, trust me, behind those scenes, those politicians, they're playing golf, they smoking cigars, they're all fucking around with each other, and they're all getting along very well when the cameras are off. So let's go after the real enemy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing that's very harmonious, just how every last one of us, we have different philosophies, different political stances, how we're still able to be on the same time, and how we know that the apparatus is the problem. That's the one that's dividing us. That's the one that's being able to have us turn against each other. But we're smart enough to actually have a real healthy conversation just about the political landscape of America, because this is a country that I grew up in. I love this country, even though there's some things that this country might not love about people like us, but it's still we still created this community, and we still, I appreciate every one of y'all for sitting on this couch, speaking your piece. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, whether you're independent, your voice always matters. And also, what did JFK said? Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we all agree that, we're all involved in one way or another to take care of our communities. And I think that that's important. I think that, honestly, as long as everybody votes, that's really the thing that gets me, is how little, and it sounds like almost everybody here is a child of an immigrant. So our immigrant parents taught us, right? They didn't have that in that country. And that's the great thing about this country, is that we do have the opportunity to vote. And I just hope that people vote. And vote, even if I don't agree with you, even if I don't share the same value, that we get out there and get involved. Because, again, Massachusetts, not enough people are challenged. I challenged a 25-year incumbent at the State House who's been in leadership and entrenched for years. It's my entire life he's been in public service. And to go against somebody like that, and to go against the machine, I hear you. I had the same experience. I got trampled, but I did it because I know that I'm going to influence that next generation, that high school kid that said, hey, there's somebody with a last name Ortiz. That's them, like my name. Maybe I can do that. And honestly, that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm like Moses. I might not get to the Holy Land. I might not get to the Promised Land, but I hope one day we do, because this country does do a lot, and we should hold it accountable to what they promised us.
So I just think that, even more importantly than everybody voting, everybody should be educating themselves on all the candidates before they vote, because I think that we put way too much emphasis on just go vote. Because there's actually signs up all over the place every election season that say just vote. And I hate them, because it's no, educate yourself first and then go vote. Don't make uneducated decisions about the rest of our lives, So people need to be educated, and I think that people like us should be the ones educating. People who are are capable of sitting down next to people who disagree with them and having a civil conversation about the disagreements. And then again, what you were just saying about the politicians just living their lives and going golfing and, you know, not even worrying about regular people problems. I mean, they all do that, every single one of them. But there's only one of them that's getting shot at, though. So, you know, there's that. But, yeah, I think the most important thing that we could do is be educating the people around us.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree around the table. The problems that we have are interconnected, so it's not like one line you can just erase. They're all interconnected, but we can all agree, that it is our government and it's the 1% that is controlling them. And we as the people need to realize those in government work for us because we've gotten relaxed and lazy about when it comes to our voting. Now, we have people just showing up, oh, I'm a woman, I'm gay, I'm black, and that's, oh, I'm going to go vote for you for those identity politics versus like looking at their history, looking at their politics and making that choice and kind of learning like this entire conversation. Like, again, when I was younger, you can have a fight between Harris and Trump. Guess what? What time are we going out to dinner? Not like, I don't want to, you know, talk to you, I don't want to see you. We're excommunicated. And it's having this conversation and not being hyper emotional and getting back to critical thinking and say, hey, we can disagree to this degree, but I don't hate you. I don't want to see harm come to you. But this is the conversation, and we have to realize those at top want all of us to be fighting, because while we're fighting, they're doing stuff behind closed doors.
And I agree with you about the identity politics. I mean, straight up, skin folk don't mean kinfolk. Like, it just, you need to know who and what they actually stand for.
My final say here is, well, thank you for inviting me. I didn't say much, but just listening to like everybody's, you know, opinions and your thoughts, it was just making me think. I like seeing different sides and trying to come to like a middle, like, okay, and also trying to understand why do you think the way you think, or why your beliefs is the way it is, or why your beliefs is the way it is. So it was really interesting just sitting here and just listening, and also I learned a lot from like each and every one of you, so I really appreciate it because of that. So thank you.
Super big shout out to Show and Tell for having me come on. I guess my closing end to it is I want everybody to just kind of go back and think about your community directly. Think about who your state representative is, who your city council member is, who represents you, right? Because whether you voted or not for that person, they are representing you and they are getting paid to do that job, and they are going to show up, they're going to collect that check, and they're going to make it happen. I'm not saying they're a bad person. I'm not saying they're a good person. What I'm saying is they are a person too at the end of the day. Now, whether you agree with what they're saying, with what they're doing or not is up to you, but you are the person that can change that, right? Like for me, once I got assimilated into Providence, I realized that I could make a difference. And so being part of that community now, I get up and I try to make a difference in the best way that I can. Now, will my impact have a lasting impact? I don't know. But at the end of the day, I know I put my best foot forward and I can move forward with that. And so I think if we all approach a community that way, then we'll all make community just slightly a little bit better. So.
Nice. And did you guys just want to go around? If you guys want to plug in your name, your social medias, or where people can find you, find more about who you are?
Facebook is Sean Nelson with the W. It's just as it says Sean Nelson. On Facebook, it's Sean for Boston. On X, Twitter.
Instagram, Twitter, Cuban Mike. You catch me in the tape deck every Friday from 6 to 7, 102.9. Boston City News every Friday from 6 to 7. And the Ruckus Podcast whenever I bring guests on the show.
I'll probably be running for state rep in 2 years too, so electsided.com. Thank you.
And you can find me on all platforms. That's Most Generous, MOS GENERROUS. You can also find me on Instagram. That's _ Most Generous 95, and also come meet the family at Show and Tell Boston.
And my name is Catherine Vitale. I'm on all the platforms too: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, under my name, Catherine Vitale, and some of my YouTube account is People's Press Media. And Sean and I also have a website, bostontoboston.com, boston.com. And we do all types of random, spontaneous live streams and conversations and direct public action. So.
And I'm Lay. You can find me on Instagram, dr_ley509. I'm on all platforms. You can also stream my music since I am also a local artist as well. And also follow my brand, The Haitian Butterfly. Yeah.
I'm not really the social media guy, but you can find me at Mr._scoops.
Nice. Show and Tell Boston, and that's a wrap.
Yeah.